Even after all the great journalism and reporting from the PS5 Pro event, I see tons of comments about how someone doesn't see any difference, complaining about how you quote unquote need a developer to show you all the differences because they're so minor, and how PS5 Pro is a waste of money. I feel the simplest answer to the question, why should I buy a PS5 Pro, is image quality. The PS5 Pro plays PS5 games with a PC level of image quality, and that's about it. If you can't see FSR2 disocclusion fizzle, don't buy a PS5 Pro. If you don't see anything wrong with the image of your PS5, don't buy a PS5 Pro. Do you guys agree? What's your buying advice for a prospective PS5 Pro purchase? I'm going to go to you on this one, Oliver, since you've actually seen the PS5 Pro and can give your opinion on it.
Yeah. I mean, I think Sony is in a weird place where they need to balance making the PS5 Pro look good and making the PS5 look bad. Like, you have a difficult situation there with your install base of 60 million consoles, and you also have an issue with your third-party partners, or maybe they don't want to show off titles so much with poor image quality in the PS5 console and great image quality on the Pro. That's maybe not something that third parties want to do. And then your first-party stable is mostly pretty good, although there are some like exclusive titles like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth that maybe aren't so great in terms of image quality. Another one I'd think of actually is Helldivers 2. That's also like a 1080p 60 title, or aiming for 1080p 60 on the base PS5. Mm-hmm. So there are definitely some games they could have picked from. Obviously, Final Fantasy is kind of like one of the standouts there, but in any case, they've chosen not to do that, and I understand why. For the most part, they've elected to keep those comparisons fairly simple and actually left some of the more meaty ones to us at the moment in our various pieces of coverage. But I totally agree with this questioner in the sense that if you aren't bothered by PS5 image quality, then don't get a Pro. If you are bothered by PS5 image quality, then consider it. I think that's a perfectly sensible thing to do. And I think there are a lot of PS5 games that look good on 4K screens, normal viewing distances, even at 60 FPS. Image breakup isn't too bad, and at that increased distance from the screen, 1440p can still look pretty good. Does not look too soft, does not look too bad, too blurry there. So I think it's going to depend on the person, depend on what kind of games you like to play, and depend on individual sensitivities to issues like this person mentions, like disocclusion fizzle and things like this that are kind of inherent to FSR2 in particular.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Alex?
I agree with everything Oliver said. Just as a part of this, though, I would also be curious. I wish, I think Sony did mention how many people were choosing performance modes. I would also love to know from Sony 75%. I would also love to know from Sony how many people are using 4K displays versus 1080p displays versus monitors that do, because, the PS5 also supports monitors to a good degree these days, like 1440p ones. I'd be curious to know those statistics too, because I've always wondered a bit how many people actually have a 4K television hooked up to their consoles ever since around PS4 Pro came around. That's a statistics I have no access to, and I'd be curious to see if that is also one of the reasons why people are just not seeing things that I see. Maybe that's one reason.
Well, I think part of the reason is that, obviously nobody has really seen the PlayStation 5 Pro yet, and all they've got to go on is media that's available on an inherently compromised video delivery platform. So we try our best to overcome those compromises. Then there's the fact that, ultimately we do know that a majority of the people watching our content are doing so on mobile devices, which makes it even more difficult for us to show the differences. I think, based on what I've seen, you kind of have to be in the presence of a large flat screen TV to be able to tell the differences, which is what Sony did with its presentation that you went to, Oliver. They had the side-by-sides, right, where you could actually see the base machine and the Pros side by side. And there are games where it is just very, very easy to spot the difference. Which one do you want? Well, if you want the one that looks better, you're going to be paying a little bit extra for it. This argument is quite interesting from my perspective, because it's kind of like, if people can't tell the difference between the presentation from one piece of hardware and then another that's got a much bigger GPU or capable of much bigger, much greater image quality, then why would there be why do people buy more expensive graphics cards? They buy them because they get more value from them, and they get more value from them from increased frame rates and image quality and features, which is exactly what the Pro is doing. Now, I can recognize entirely that in the console space there may not be that level of discernment, but at the same time, in the PC space, the audience is huge. Nvidia is selling millions of GPUs, so I don't really buy it, to be honest. I think ultimately the base PlayStation 4 is what you would call good. The Pro is better. That's the way it works. And you pay extra for better. It's that simple. Nobody's saying to you, you've got to buy a PlayStation 5 Pro. Ultimately it's down to the user to make an individual sort of choice as to what they want. It really is that simple. Any final words on that one before we move on?
I guess the only one thing that I would love to see is, and maybe it's just not possible, but like NVIDIA gets away with some of this too, because they can throw out like, you're going to get path traced Indiana Jones. You're going to get path traced Cyberpunk. And those things are honestly more obvious from a visual perspective, even just side by sides without zooming and things like that. And I just think that was why I said originally when we talked about the initial presentation from Mark Cerny, which was more probably just him inserted into some sort of advertising video, but where it could have shown off like transformational differences due to ray tracing as part of the presentation, a lot more of it. And I think that is one thing that shows up without zooms in a YouTube video. So maybe that's one thing I would prefer they show in the future too.
Like with F124, where it's like, that is a pretty different looking title.
Yeah, like you showed the with and without in the beginning of the track area, and it's like all glowy and weird on the base, and it's like actually has proper occlusion, on the Pro. Like those are things that I can see so easily, and I think Tom, Dick, or Harry, whoever they are, they can also see it.
Okay. Tom, Dick, and Harry.
Yeah, why not?
Okay. I think there's something else to add into the discussion as well on the PC side, which is that, everybody was doing their PC builds that cost the same as a PlayStation 5 Pro, and, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But, we've got this new generation of GPUs coming from NVIDIA. Inevitably, price versus performance is going to shift even more towards the PC at that point. It kind of has to, otherwise 50 series is dead in the water, really. Mm-hmm. That's going to be interesting in terms of this kind of gradual moving together of console and PC pricing.